All right, good evening, fellas. We got swing shifters out there. Today is a little more, not so much about the military maintainers, but this one's more for the people running shops who are on the civilian side looking to hire maintainers. So this one is for you guys. Sorry, I'm on the road right now, and um, so there's a different background and little setup here. But I didn't want to give up on breaking my streak. We're at day 15, and I'm kind of proud of that. Gotta be proud of the small things. And consistency seems to be a tough one. Just like I was talking about yesterday, is keeping up with being consistent, and I wanted to be consistent on one thing, and work on that part. So, all right, let's see. You know, big thing. I did a little podcast earlier today with a friend of mine. He's also a recruiter for a company, and he talked to me about, the obvious things. What is their company looking for? What he sees out there that could possibly help them, to get the first steps done. And of course, it's 8610-2 because if you're going to work for the airlines, you cannot work there without your AMP. So we talked about that, and one of the things he talked about is their pipeline. It's they're not doing too much outreach, and there's a ton of talent. So it's not so much hiring harder is the solution. I mean, the real problem is the back end of everything. Because I know recruiters go out there like crazy. They want to do more. They want to. I mean, of course, they're incentivized to do so, right? So. And it's just, well, I would have all these issues with recruiters in the past where they say they would need a problem, you go get it, and then you don't hear from them. Or we don't hear a lot of times, I hear it from, it's kind of stops at HR or a company so big that there's a lot of bureaucracy in the middle, right? I had I was talking to a major corporation, and she was in a one of those CXOs, let's put it that way, CXO positions. And she told me is that their company's so big that there's so much bureaucracy, it takes forever to get back with them. And then by the time they get back with them after a couple of months, they've already lost that guy, that person has already moved on because they get tired of waiting. And so this has kind of been a reoccurring problem is where, it's not so much your hiring, it's the whole development, the whole pipeline, from the time they apply their application to them setting foot on your hangar floor. And and somewhere in that middle, things are like in a bottleneck, like a funnel almost, where it starts off, you get a lot of them, and then you just you almost get stuck in the middle in that funnel. So, you know, as I'm listening to, having this conversation with my friend earlier today, um, I'm just thinking about where we can help, where web maintainers could help, especially getting them started with their AMP. And so not just hiring, because I know recruiters are out there doing it, right? It's what's going on after they get their application, right? We want to, of course, make sure they're qualified, and if they need it, let's, get them ready for it, right? Because companies are competing for the same talent, and but you poaching them is doesn't mean it's growing the total workforce, right? There's a there's a problem where when you're competing for the same person, it's the retention, right? So you got to have a great culture, because a lot of times I see is if you have a great culture, they're gonna stay, even if they might miss out on a couple bucks an hour. So, if the demand keeps rising and the supply stays flat, the problem compounds. So you you losing out on these technicians is going to hurt your company in the long run, because if you can't keep them, the retention is not there. If you're not paying them well, not taking care of them well, they're going to be out. So what's some of the workforce gaps? The workforce development gap, it could be, it's a real issue. Those pipelines are becoming slow because nobody's developing them. The training is slow, and military maintainers get out every year. What was it, 22,000 who were trained in the military to be aviation mechanics, and they get out, and nobody's meeting them at nobody's doing the outreach to be there in person to talk about their opportunities. And I was talking to my buddy about this very same topic, and he's like, a lot of times when he's meeting with people, out of all the people he's meeting, in retainers, they have no clue. They have no clue what opportunities are out there. They have no clue that getting into the airlines is an opportunity. So the talent exists. It's just the bridge doesn't. And as I go on through my notes, this is the things I think about. This is as I'm writing this stuff and uh, working on hitting those topics that uh, I'm seeing my own experience, talking to friends who are recruiters, talking to director of maintenance, um, people who are also trying to develop the workforce, especially on the military side. A lot of them have no clue. It's almost non-existent. So that's why I'm making these videos. And this one is for the companies. It's just really not that it rubbed me the wrong way. It's just there's a lot of work to be done, and a lot of work on my side to reach out to companies, make content for you guys that uh, we have they have a place to go to. All right. So how do sponsors change the outcome? You can remove the friction. You can put them into a program like mine. It's free, and then that will accelerate them through the A&P process, through 8610-2, get in their A&P, and if y'all can run it, it can be done for free, making sure that they get their A&P and they can get back to work. All right, so it's it's possible to get them through without a problem. And so when companies, I realized this when I used to work with for a few major companies that we were helping them in the process. As we were getting students, we would tell them, "Hey, you're about to get out? Cool. This company is looking for military maintainers with military experience." And so we were helping them with the recruiting stuff. So that just reduces a bunch of friction from the 8610-2 side to accelerating them through the A&P, and you know you create quite a bit of loyalty with them, right? Money is always not going to buy people. It does help reduce the obstacles, that friction that I talked about in the beginning. It's not just about giving. It's investing in this supply, because these guys will pick it up fast and be a huge value add to your team. All right. My next topic is, military maintainers being a solution for the workforce gap in aviation maintenance. All right. So they already have experience turning the wrenches, reading the instructions, and following safety guidelines. They already have that, right? It's already been studied over and over that they have low washout, high retention, they have experience in all different ways. They're disciplined and they're ready to go. So this is the most one of the most efficient workforce pipelines in aviation, and a lot of companies are not investing more into this. And and I think that that would help you bring in talent. Like I said, 22,000 maintenance technicians who get out, who've been already have this training as it is, and they get out without their AMP or small. I think it was like less than 10% get out. So there's a huge opportunity there to invest. Let's see. So what's the impact actually look like, right? You're gonna have some shorter transition timelines. They go from working full time, maybe you have to wait a couple of weeks to a month, so they're ready to go. And they're on your team on your hangar in a couple of months. Faster certification. They already have the experience, so that means they can take a 2-week program and they're knock it out and going into your Gen Fam classes, all your onboarding, all your onboarding trainings. For the most part, as soon as they get the AMP, that's the easy part. You knock that out. That was definitely the hardest part of the candidate onboarding, and their crew chiefs. FAA says they're qualified to test, and boom, the DME does this thing, and they get an AMP. So you definitely, I'm not saying it's gonna be 100%, but you definitely reduce, hiring risky people. So, like I said, we used to help. We even I've personally have called some of these major companies. I was like, hey man, I don't know if this guy's legit because he didn't know not much of anything. And we've had a guy who wasn't testing well. Then when I was personally studying with him, he didn't know much about maintenance. And he struggled a little bit on the practicals, and we just gave the company a heads up. So that that kind of partnership does help the program that they be running and the director of maintenance. And I would love to meet more director of maintenance because I can give them the heads up. I like to build these big partnerships where the company gets a great technician, and I would love to help the companies know that they're getting a good technician. That even though it's 2 weeks and we're just helping them get into AMP, we can read a lot of these guys how well they do, how fast they're picking it up. Not that it's a big thing, but of course it helps that a technician picks up things fast. He can turn a wrench a certain way, or he can really think and solve problems right away. You know, uh, and you can kind of see if a guy's always kind of like, you know, um, hey, how do you do this? How do you do that? How do you do this? And after you already give him the book and the instructions, let's, what's he gonna do with these tools, with his instructions? Is he gonna keep looking for you to work on it, or is he gonna actually read it, do it right, or get close to it, and then we fix it from there? So uh, we know those little things, and we would have those conversations with the recruiter or the program manager that, hey, this guy is really good. You got a good guy on in your hands with this, and uh, And that's the benefits of minimizing your risk. So that's our mission, is to help out these maintainers, you know, during their next chapter of their career in aviation maintenance. And sometimes these guys don't even know that's even an option. So we're doing our part to ensure that civilian aviation is similar to military, but without all the extra BS. And the aircraft are much simpler, as my friend would say, is because there's components that aircraft have to, it's a little more rugged. They're a little more, there's a little more components on it because uh, they have to have certain uh, test levels that are a little more extreme than a, just a 737 that is just goes on the runway and takes off. Normal. It's not trying to dodge missiles or anything like that. So, think about that pipeline where if you are struggling in that, you're struggling with guys who are getting their 8610-2s or their AMPs, hit us up. We're here to help and looking forward for you to have a long-term workforce health, a healthy pipeline with, some badass maintainers. So follow us on just DM me and I'll give you the school community so that way you can have and talk to these maintenance technicians and see, and tell them this is how it is, guys. We'd like to hear your insights in the community and have a great night. Crush it. And I'm pulling shots, guys.